Welcome to The Hype Within, exploring journeys of authentic leadership and growth. On the show, tech leaders will share their stories of developing their leadership skills and challenges they faced along the way. You'll learn about their approaches to self-reflection and personal growth, and how they've been able to build a foundation of authenticity that has propelled them to success. I'm your host, Hana Jacover, B2B marketing leader turned leadership and executive coach. Are you ready to get hyped up? Let's dive in. Hi leaders, welcome back to The Hype Within. We have Michelle Kim with us today, who's the Director of Strategy and Sales Operations at Zendesk. Hi Michelle, how are you?
Hi Hana, nice to meet you. Thank you so much for having me as a guest.
Thank you for joining. I'm so excited to hear about your leadership journey and some of the golden nuggets that you have to share with our audience. Why don't we get started with just providing a brief introduction about yourself?
Sure. I hope I have some golden nuggets to share. Hopefully it'll help someone. At least one person is all it matters to me. So my name is Michelle Kim. As you mentioned, I'm currently Director of Sales Strategy and Operations at Zendesk. So over the course of my 15 years in tech, I've been in SaaS, software, hardware sales, marketing, program management, and revenue operations with heavy emphasis on customer success operations and now sales operations. So that's kind of a high-level recap of my career thus far.
Love it. And thinking about moving into your leadership journey, when do you feel like you really stepped into that leadership role?
So as for my leadership, style first, personally all in on personal growth, not just for myself, but also for my teams, and always looking for continuous improvement and development in the people that I surround myself with, as well as our processes and policies and how we operate businesses. So I've always kind of been someone who's had that Shoshin or beginner's mindset of always wanting to learn. I was always a very good student. So I think it's kind of a positive reinforcement. But for me, the reason why people development and self-development is so important is because companies, after all, are made of people. And while the reality is that most people, they don't love their day jobs, but I do find it my responsibility to help coach my team and to coach, mentees that I have, or high potential people in the organization that don't roll up to me that I want to invest in. It's my responsibility to help them, right? To help them find interesting projects to either lead or kick off or work on, or, at very bare minimum, interesting people for them to talk to so they can help figure out where they want to optimize their own career journeys, right? And so it's kind of tough to balance, but I've always been extremely driven. I've always had a strong sense of ownership and accountability. And I've always had extremely high standards, kind of scary, for myself and others. But I think to answer your question of when did my leadership journey start, I think it started maybe several years ago when I'm really proud of this. I recently had some people tell me that, oh, you're so approachable and your leadership style is so empathetic and compassionate. And I think I was not like that at all when I was younger, right? And so it's something I've really worked on over the last 5 to 8 years or so to really figure out, I care about things intensely, right? I care about the work I do. It's very meaningful to me. I need to also care about the people who I work with. And ultimately at the end of the day, we're all here working together and trying to make stuff work and make cool things, happen.
I love that approach. And that's really interesting. And I feel like for a lot of leaders, it really does take the introspective work. There's a moment in our lives where we do that work and then we come out of it as a very different leader, which it sounds like you're describing. I'm curious because you mentioned empathy, right? And said I wasn't necessarily that way when I was younger. What were the steps that you went through to build something like empathy?
Okay, so I'm actually going to share with you, something of a less traditional kind of career decision that I made in my life.
Love it.
So I'll actually share, it's the scariest career decision I ever made in my life that helped me become more empathetic and more in tune with my emotions and more introspective on a daily basis, right? So the scariest decision of my career so far was after 3 years in sales, right after college, SaaS, software, hardware sales, I quit my job my high paying job at LinkedIn because I got accepted into Teach for America and like a few other graduate school programs. So it was scary for me to like leave that money behind and try to start over. But it was kind of a blessing in disguise. I got into a car accident. And so I was fortunate to be able to get a deferral for Teach for America for, I think it was up to 2 years. I was able to defer. I had saved up money from my sales job because I was like, oh, I'm going to be a teacher for a few years at minimum. So I need to have extra money. So I had cash on hand. And I really spent effectively a year and a half to work on recuperating. So it was my physical health, my mental health, my emotional health. So after spending like roughly 25 years as an extremely type A person, straight A student, high achiever, hitting quotas, all that stuff, it was the first time where I just let myself stop. And to be candid, it was kind of a shock for me, I guess, because recovering from physical trauma is hard in and of itself. It wasn't super major, but I think that time was really the best decision I could have made for myself in my career because I was in a role where I was being extremely successful, but I wasn't feeling fulfilled or super interested, honestly, in the work. And so I could have gone on and on and on and spent my whole career in sales, making a lot of money probably, and helping a lot of companies. But I made that risk, and doing that, taking that break from work and focusing, and it's a privilege, right? Not everyone could do this, but having that privilege of money saved up and having a support system of my family to help me really gave me a chance to reflect. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not working. I still need to be productive because that's the type of person I am. So I said, hey, for kicks, let me study for the bar exam, law school, LSAT. And let me also try and see if I can get a job at the Superior Court of Los Angeles. And so what's funny is I did get a job offer from the LA Superior Court, and I had that offer in hand. And then my first director out of college, she actually had been kind of calling me a couple of months back and forth, just trying to convince me to come back into tech instead of going to go be a teacher. And I didn't tell her about the legal thing at the time, but she really was trying to bring me into a world where she thought I would get a lot of value and I could provide a lot of value. And so what happened at that point was, even though I had that offer to work at the LA Superior Court, I actually also got an offer to work in marketing at Seagate. And so in a weird turn of events, like deciding to move from sales to trying to do teaching and having like this somewhat fortuitous thing, I guess, happen to me. And then having this time, a year and a half, to really I lost like a lot of weight. I was eating so healthy and just like so focused on really figuring out what will help me be the best version of myself. And so I won't say that at that moment, that was probably more than 10 years ago now. I won't say that in that moment, I figured everything out, but it was the catalyst that helped kick off kind of the path to where I am today as a leader.
Wow, what a story. Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing. I have so many things I want to dive into, but yeah, I feel like when we encounter trauma, like on many different fronts, but like you had physical trauma, you probably also with car accident had emotional trauma. I think that like just growing up in the society that we live in is traumatic as well. So we all have layers of trauma, and there's a point in your life sometimes, especially if you have more trauma or if something happens, like you slam on the brakes and you have to deal with it. You have to deal with it. And in your case, it was that physical trauma, right? Like you were healing. And what else were you going to do? I find it really interesting too that like your productivity was like, you wanted to keep going. And I think that I run into with a lot of my coachees, where it's like, when was the last time you just sat and did nothing and reclaimed the definition of being productive? Like productivity can be so many different things to so many different people. And I experienced that same thing where I had to like adjust my interpretation of productivity. Just be like, it's okay if you're just resting. Rest can equal productivity. But that's a hard pill to swallow if you are like type A. I am very much that way too. So I hated it. But the second part of your story, I love that you took such inspired action. I always find it so interesting when the universe directs us, and these things may not always look like opportunities or gifts or things that are positive, but you were able to see through that all of those opportunities, and you took inspired action down the path that you wanted to go, which I think is truly amazing. I mean, I usually ask people about inspirations and influences. I would imagine that had a huge influence on your leadership journey. Is there anything else that helped shape or influence your personal and professional growth that you want to call out?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, there's so much. I'm someone who always looks for ways to be inspired. And I think there are kind of two buckets of where I've been naturally been like, oh, wow, like that's really something that these two buckets of people have really helped me, right? And like, I want to pay it forward. And that's why I'm speaking up instead of like just kind of heads down, working and trying to climb the career path, right? So career ladder, right? So I have two buckets, right, of kind of who have inspired me in my leadership journey. So the first bucket is Asian American women who look like me. And so I can't leave out my mother. And she graduated college in Seoul, South Korea, and she became the first woman at her bank to take on a managerial role, which was really unheard of for women of her generation. Thing that's a little bit interesting is that I didn't even know she was in this sort of situation in her professional world or professional life in Korea until I was promoted to director, and she kind of started sharing that story with me. So like before, even I was promoted in 2022. So before that, I kind of had seen her as, and she still is, this woman who came from Korea to the United States in the 80s to be an entrepreneur. So she's been kind of the first influence. And then I mentioned her earlier, but my first director out of college, Irene Chang, she's currently the head of global expansion sales at Cloudflare. And I'm so proud of our relationship because it's been 15 years and I still channel her every day. And I think about how she would approach this situation or how she would speak to this person because sometimes we deal with challenging people, but she did it with a lot of humor and grace, which I felt like I didn't have in the past. And now I feel really flattered because like even this morning, she called me for advice in my domain expertise. So she's been inspiring. She continues to inspire me. I've had a couple of really strong RevOps Asian American women influences as well. And I'm so lucky that I went to a startup prior to Zendesk called Signified, an e-commerce fraud prevention startup where I was building up the customer success operations functions. And there was, after I joined, Rosalind Santillalena and Jackie Au both joined leading sales ops and marketing ops respectively. And like, I've just learned they're just maybe a little bit ahead of me in their careers, but they know so much. They've been at a lot of really great companies, have a lot of expertise. And during the pandemic, I felt they kind of saved me because we initiated like a kind of a weekly or biweekly sort of Zoom call just to check in and see how we were doing. And I would go to them with questions about, hey, like, when you're doing this, like, does this sound right to you? Because sales ops was fairly new to, like, not new, but newer for me when I started at Zendesk. So I got the benefit of having these friends and mentors who kind of gave their advice. And then most impactfully, I guess, in this like first bucket of Asian American women are the two women who were at Zendesk when I first started in my department. So I had mentioned Irene, but never before in my career had I had more than one Asian American or Asian woman in position of power in my direct department. And when I joined Zendesk, I knew that Ron Zhao, who was the senior director at the time of my team, I knew she was Asian. She had interviewed me. And when I got to Zendesk in the open floor plan where we, had all the desks, I was looking through our company directory and I literally started crying because I saw that the leadership team was actually quite diverse. My department was Indian male named Devang Desai, and he had about 5 direct reports, I think, senior directors, and 2 of them were Asian American women. And that really empowered me to find that confidence and be bold and find success at my job here at Zendesk. So these 2 women really helped inspire me by just being, right? I didn't get a lot of direct mentorship or necessarily probably sponsorship from them at the time, but just seeing them there was really impactful. And then the second bucket of who's inspired me, we cannot climb and ascend without help from mentors, allies, and sponsors. But many times that comes in the form of white people are still in positions of power in tech as well. And that's changing, but I'm very grateful for some of the men in my career who have helped me, who've coached me, who've mentored me, who've actually, more importantly, sponsored me, because I think that promotion really only happens with the appropriate sponsorship. So I'll just name drop my former manager, Dimitri Tamperopoulos, who is just like so confident, so calm and cool and collected, so well respected. He just like was a great mentor in the areas of like sales strategy and like more helped me level up with critical thinking and being strategic. And then obviously I mentioned him before, but he's now the former GTM ops and currently the SVP, I think, of operations at Blaze, I think. Braze. So Devang Desai. So like just coming into a company and seeing that the leadership has supported decisions to hire diverse professionals is really encouraging. Like when you come into a company and you see like it could be more diverse, 100%, it always could be. But just having a team of people that wasn't all just one gender or one race really helped me feel empowered to just be more myself.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. It's just like such a great showcase of the power of representation and belonging. And yeah, like it means a lot. And I don't know that our fellow colleagues who are white completely understand that, the power of it. Because I mean, I've been in similar situations where you see, like I see a Black woman leader and it literally brings tears to my eyes because it is that representation that is so, so important that also encourages you to feel that belonging. Like you actually feel like I belong here because I see other people that look like me in all different positions and they're helping me and they're helping me collaborate. And it's just that environment and that culture it's very powerful. It's very powerful. And I feel like it's hard to come by. So it's amazing that you've had that in your career on multiple different levels. It's very exciting.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I think I talk to a lot of women in tech and it's not very common.
Yes, I would agree. Like, I don't think for me personally, I have worked with clients that are Black, but I have never had anyone in the leadership seat with me on the team that was Black. And that in itself, like I was always a lot of the times kind of like the one and only on the team and working in smaller teams. But yeah, that's like, it's a pretty shitty position to be in. And so on the opposite side of that, I just wish more women specifically and women of color, that women of underrepresented groups have an opportunity to feel that belonging and feel that representation and allow it to propel them in their career because it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this comment of, I think I was interviewing someone for like a conversation she mentioned how it was so weird for her that she was the only woman of color in the room when she showed up to a room of like 25 men.
Mm-hmm.
And she asked, like, am I the only one that feels like it's weird? I really resonated with that because I think most people, it's not malintent. Most people, 99.9% of people are not consciously trying to push people down, right? I think it's just more of an awareness and being self-aware and aware of your teams. And like, yeah, does this person feel comfortable? Like, are they being talked over? Like, those are all so important things to consider when you end up in a position of leadership, right? Because you have to read the room and kind of do your best to support the diversity of thought. I hear this a lot, right? We need diversity of thought. I don't care about color. I think that is not personally the way I see the world. I think diversity of thought really comes from diversity of experience, and that can really only come from looking different, sounding different, having different, I guess, childhood upbringings, different socioeconomic status backgrounds. So those are all things that I really think are important to building a culture that isn't necessarily like this whole idea of, are you a culture fit? No, we want people who are culture adds. Mm-hmm. So I think that the conundrum of being an only in the room only increases as you increase in your, I guess, role in the corporate world, at least in the tech world.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see a little bit less of it. It's still very hard.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's something to be said too about bringing in this layer of diversity, but then like, how do you make sure that the belonging is there? It's not just about adding diversity. It's about what are we doing as leaders to now support all of the layers of diversity so we can work together and share these really amazing perspectives that do come from the lived experiences of being diverse and everybody having those different experiences. So I think that's one interesting angle or route to think about is, okay, yes, there's diversity in the company, but how are you supporting these individuals? I mean, we just see the story, like just recently, the story about Uber, right? And their chief diversity officer.
The Karen incident.
Yes, the Karen incident. Oh my gosh. What are your thoughts on that? Since we're here.
I mean, this goes back to like the intent, right? Like, I think from my brief reading of like an article somewhere, it sounds like they tried to make it a safe space for white women to share their perspective. And then they had a second session to kind of let the people of color or not even the people of color, just people in general probably who were upset about the naming of that session, speak up. It's really challenging because we're living in a world where everyone wants to be supportive and nice and heard. But it's what you said, right? It's not enough to invite people to the dance or to the party. You have to invite them to dance. And also you have to invite them and sponsor them and recommend them to be like the planning committee, right? Like the people in charge of making these things happen. And so that's where I see like a lot of gaps still, where for me personally, and then as I talk to more, especially women, but just people of color in general and like white people too, I think people really try. You have to lift others up, give people a chance, right? Because if we're constantly elevating people who have already done the job, who already know, you de-risk the situation, especially in this economy, by picking people, by hiring people that have done the job before. That's not going to support or foster growth or innovation, right? It's a safe choice.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was a good response to your question.
It's great. It's great. Yeah. No, we veered off a little bit. I took the opportunity because I always feel highlighting diversity is really important, especially when we're talking about leadership. It really does go hand in hand, promoting and talking about diversity in the way that we are right now as leaders. I think that's disruptive, sadly, but it is.
Sad.
Being the only in the room is disruptive. Seeing that representation for others can be seen as disruptive. But from your lens and your experience as a leader, how have you sought to disrupt or challenge traditional leadership norms aside from just being yourself?
I mean, I think it is just being myself, to be honest. In 2021, the Atlanta spa shootings happened. In 2022, I don't know if you remember, but her name was Michelle Go. She was an Asian American woman in New York who was pushed off the train. So those types of incidents, all the hate crimes against Asians in the United States really impacted me, and like the conscientious decision I made on how I would show up as a leader. Because as we kind of covered already, I'm a very career and goal-oriented person. But, these incidents, as well as the people in my network and even like strangers on LinkedIn that I followed, they really inspired me to use my voice because it's really scary. It's scary and daring to be kind of more vocal about these types of topics on LinkedIn, in public forums. It's scary to put myself out there and to get more involved, or at least I'm trying to get more involved in these communities that I identify with. And this is different than the traditional leadership norm, where leaders are kind of sometimes maybe somehow seen as more unknowable and unapproachable, sort of more like these like people who have like authority, but like don't feel comfortable talking to them. That's how I feel a lot about the white men who are in like C level positions or VP level positions in past companies I've been at. But I know many leaders are afraid to speak up about these topics because maybe there's a fear of backlash, or maybe there's a fear that it'll make them less hireable. And I had that fear too. I have that fear, but I made a very conscientious decision this year that this is going to be 2023 is a year that I'm going to be more courageous outside of my career. I'm going to say what I stick to my values, right? Stand up for what's important to me, create awareness about what's important to me and what inspires me and motivates me is being able to see that change in people, right? Because I'm in my area of expertise, which is currently RevOps, but it's all people that we work with. And so I think that despite maybe some companies not wanting to hire me in the future, I think it's still worth it, because if they see something that I've put out there in the world, in the internets, and they don't want to hire me, then I think that's probably for the best, right? I don't want to be at a company where their values don't align with mine, right? And so, I'll just also do a quick plug of this is why I also launched my own podcast, which was also very scary this year, called Breaking the Tech Ceiling. And so I wanted to interview and share, like, in my own career journey, right? I'm at a director level, mid to late career. And I just needed to get some inspiration. And so instead of just doing it on my own, which I had done for a quarter, I decided to share with the world interviews that I'm having with VP and C-level women in tech and non-engineering leadership roles, just so I can kind of hear like, yeah, what did you do to get to that level, right? Like, did you network? Did you cold apply? These are all things that, like, the how of things is sometimes unclear. So I think that's very untraditional to kind of try to expose. I don't know what the equivalent expression is, but there's like this term like open the kimono. It's like a terrible expression, but like opening, kind of lifting the veil, right? Maybe that's a better expression of the mystery of how do you get to those positions, right? Especially in public companies or high growth startups. I thought it would be really important to at least give people who don't have access to my network, right? Because I've now worked with a lot of executives that, I guess, insight or visibility. So I think that's pretty different than most people. But I'm really trying to find more ways to get more involved in women in tech type communities and AAPI communities. And it's been a little bit slow because I do have a full-time job. Yeah. Still, it's been really rewarding. And I think to answer your question, right, I want to be the type of person, the type of coworker, leader that's human. And for better or worse, I bring it back to that priority of mine, which is development. I want to be myself. I want to grow to be the best version of myself I can become. And it might not always be linear, but just like, that's really important to me. And I think showing people that that's okay to do and still be able to be successful in your career is really important to highlight.
Congratulations on the podcast. We're disrupting together.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a way to go is to have more transparency around, for this podcast, for example, like, I want to hear what it's like to be a leader from other people's perspective. I want to showcase that for emerging leaders, emerging executives, because I work with those individuals as a coach, but I can only have those conversations and ask those questions. But this also provides them that insight that they're going to get from mentors and sponsors where they might not have access to them. And just having those conversations broadcasted around topics like leadership, I think, is so important, because I feel like it's been glamorized for way too long. And there's so many books and research and theories on leadership, but you see it in practice. I don't know that half the people that are in leadership positions have read any of that stuff, Well,
I will say, Hana, one more thing too, is the vast majority of that programming and material and educational content is written by white people and generally for white people. So I think I'm starting to see a trend more of people speaking up, like you and myself, doing more things to highlight leaders who are not the traditional stereotype of what we think. Is really important that we continue to do that and to continue to hopefully empower people who want to write books or who want to create content or teach, that there is a different way to be successful as a leader.
Yeah. When I was seeking out, okay, what kind of training do I want to go through? It was really important to me that the program took into consideration that decolonized view of coaching, because coaching in itself, leadership in itself, just like you said, like it is very whitewashed. A lot of the theories as well, and coaching too, are lifted from communities, most of the time Indigenous communities, but other communities that are underrepresented. And it was important to me to make sure that I was in a program where that was uncovered, or to use your term, the veil was lifted a little bit, and we explored those different perspectives of here's where this actually came from. That's like next level learning for people who, I would say, if you're a part of an underrepresented group, you obviously want to do that learning because that's your history. I want to hear the story from the perspective of the person that created this or that is experiencing this. And so I think that it's more attractive for us to seek out those stories. But the traditional white male leader, I feel like it's mainstream right now to pick up a book and it's all written by white men, especially on leadership. And I just hope that we can see that change, that shift. You talked about you're really passionate about self-reflection, personal growth. You've prioritized your career. What are some unconventional methods or practices that you've used to foster that reflection and growth for yourself?
So there are two things that I've gotten, I think, pretty good at to help me with my own development and growth. So the first is leveraging mentorships, and second is building bridges. So on the first topic of leveraging mentorships, so I think I've sought out somewhat successfully more mentors than the average professional because I'm diligent. I said this before, like I'm a forever student. I learn by studying and researching, and part of why I started my podcast is to share my journey to explore my career options, but also to study and learn and research from these people, right? And so I think what people sometimes need to keep in mind is not all of my mentors know they've been my mentors, because you can get spot mentorship from pretty much anyone because everyone is good at something, right? And my grandmother used to say, like, you can even learn from an elementary school kid. Like everyone has something that they're good at. And I think it just, you need to take, or I take time to try and do my best of, even if I don't like this person there very much, or like, even if I don't agree with their style or whatever, I really try my best to at least observe and find like, what can I learn from this person? What are they doing that's effective? What are they doing that's not effective? Because then for me, I can start a pattern matching as well, right? Like, okay, I'm like this. I don't have this. I will never be like that. But, you know, I have other people on my team who maybe have some of the strengths that I don't have. So I think I was just talking to a friend about this last night. I think all leaders need to have domain expertise. Like they don't have to be the experts on everything. They have to have some knowledge and keep up with the technologies and the times. But yeah, I think just like providing that mentorship and getting mentorship is really an effective way to develop yourself. And so that's what I mean by leveraging mentorship. It's not like always having a mentor. It's not always having official programs that you're a part of. It's like a two-way street, right? Like you get mentorship, you have to give mentorship, and you develop in both ways. If you don't feel comfortable with that, which some people don't feel comfortable, and I had to build that skill, enroll or join or be a part of more formal mentorship programs. I've been part of a few of those. I've been nominated for some of those at past companies too. So that's number one. And then number two, I would say for emerging leaders, I think I said it was about building bridges, right? So networking is not easy, right? Like, and it's sort of like this weird word of like, oh, like networking, plus I have to go out and like talk to people that I don't know. But I think if you approach it with a curiosity, like for myself, I'm just like, okay, well, I want to know, what have they done? What are they doing at their company? That's what I go in. And that's like kind of the perspective of, or like kind of the meat behind most of my conversations. When I meet people, I say like, hey, I saw that you did this and this and this at these companies. Can we chat? Because I have this problem right now. Or like, I'm thinking about that too. And so just connecting the dots, right? And collaborating with others in my field at different companies and industries, I think that's helped me with my growth. Even as an example, like this week, I happened to meet a VP of sales systems at a big company. Their sales team was trying to sell us something. And then I was like, wait a minute, can we just talk to your team, like an ops to ops thing, decide? And that happened. And so my team internally at Zendesk met with this other team, and then we just had a debrief on how that conversation went as well. So I think that serves a dual purpose too, right? It's like personal growth, like you're learning and trying to figure out like, how can I make things better? But also it helps convey to the team, your company, that like, hey, you know what you're doing? And like, you're talking to people, you're doing these things, you're trying to figure out what's happening in the industry, in your space. Mm-hmm. But really, I think this is not really, other than like those two topics and kind of the general, like investing in yourself, like with classes and coaching, which I 100% endorse. Coaching changed my career trajectory, and doing classes with Stanford Continuing Studies is something I always do. Every quarter, I do at least one weekend workshop. But, you know, if you don't have the money, if you don't have the time, I'm going to bring it back to that mentorship thing, right? And I'm going to bring it back to something even more specific, which is listening. I just want to share one last anecdote to kind of help emerging leaders reframe how they think about development. So my senior year of high school, I had a mentee who was a junior, and her friend suddenly passed away. She kept lamenting to me that, oh no, Sharon was going to make such a big difference in the world. Like, I can't believe this happened to her, and all these things that we think when a friend unexpectedly passes. And I listened to her, and I did what I could to support her in this challenging time. And a few weeks later, I got a letter from that person, which I still have today in my little like box in my closet. And apparently I had told her, hey, look, Sharon has already changed the world. Look how she's changed you. So I tell this story to demonstrate that growth doesn't necessarily come automatically from classes and mentorship and coaching sessions. But at that time, I did my best to listen to someone in crisis. But getting that letter, I probably would have never even thought of it 10, 20 years later, right? But getting that letter from her really made me realize what a difference one person can make, to have someone who's truly listening. And for me, I'm a strong auditory learner. So mentoring and receiving mentorship and listening to podcasts have all helped me develop. But I think listening to others, truly listening and finding your own learning strengths and figuring out how to make it a no-brainer for yourself to grow every single day, I think that's what will help you continually level up.
Those are great tips. Okay, I know we're getting to the end of our time. I would love to hear, what is your leadership superpower?
I would say that I've worked really hard at this. I think I've gotten better and good at understanding, what do people like? What are they good at? Doesn't matter if you're an analyst, an intern, a VP. I ask people, hey, what do you want in your career? And what do you need to be successful in that? So when you understand sometimes people don't want to climb the corporate ladder, then there's a separate set of things that might help fulfill them, but will still be helpful for you and your team to be productive. I think these are all really important to suss out from people so that you can let people live their best lives as best as possible, right? I love my job. I like what I do. I like work. I'm a person who tends to work a lot, and I've been better at balancing my time and my mental health and kind of turning off work as needed. But most people are just like, okay, this is my day job. I don't like this. So just finding ways to keep people engaged and motivated is something that I've hopefully gotten good at. And I really try to connect people to opportunities that they want to pursue. And that could be within the team. It can be within the company. Work is unfortunately or fortunately such a big part of the human experience these days that when I'm working with someone, I would really like to help them figure out work that gives them some degree of like satisfaction. And then in turn, I would also like that, right? Because as you advance in your career, certain things that were exciting before become less exciting. If you pass that torch onto someone else on your team or someone else in the company who does find that work exciting, you get a chance to try something new and different with the experiences that you have. So I always try to seek that out. I think it's very rare because it's a lot of energy to actively invest in high potential individuals in your company. I don't just mentor people on my team. I try to find other mentors or ask them to find other mentors in the company. But for me, I really try to find mentees that have high potential, have interests, have passions that align with the skills that I have. And a lot of the times that means that they have knowledge or skills that I don't have. So it's really great to learn from them. And this goes back to the continuous learning. and why I find mentorship so helpful and interesting. So I think that helps the company and it helps that person grow. Just figuring out people who have the talent and the passion, and then sponsoring them, doing my part, right, as a leader and sponsoring them. I saved the infographic on my phone yesterday night about the 5 levels of leadership. And the first kind of level is positional, like you have to follow your leader because they're, your leader, your manager. And then there's a couple of other levels in between, like just relationship based and results based. But the top is the respect. These are the leaders who are inspiring, who they stand for something. They have values that resonate with you, that you believe in, and you want to do things to make things better, not because you're seeking approval or not because they are your boss and you have to do it, but because, hey, we're trying to make a change together. And that level is the level of respect. So yeah, that's what I strive to be. I think I've tried actively to sponsor people in their careers, but yeah, it's always a work in progress, like always growing and learning.
That's beautiful. I love the 5 levels of leadership. And those are the people, that top level, those are the leaders that people follow. And those are the leaders that people remember because they, like you said, they change your life. They change your life. And just from this conversation, I know that you're doing that for people as a leader. And I'm so happy that you've been able to come on and share some of your wisdom and your really inspiring stories. And I appreciate you. And thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here.
Oh, Hana, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Like we said earlier, it's so important that you highlight what it is to be a leader, right? Like it can come in different flavors and shapes and styles. And like when people ask me for advice, like it's not a one size fits all.
Yeah.
And that's why like coaching is so important, because coaching is helping that person find the answer within themselves. I always thought like, okay, what's the right answer? Where's the right answer? I have to figure that out.
Yeah, you have it.
Yeah. So I think that this initiative that you've kicked off to elevate leaders all around is really going to make a good impact.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being on, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. I hope you walk away with something empowering that you can take into your own leadership journey. Are you a high-performing executive looking to take your career to the next level? Or maybe you're an emerging leader who wants to develop the skills you need to advance in your role and show up authentically. Or maybe you're experiencing burnout and struggling to find a better work-life balance. Whatever your situation is, one-on-one coaching can help you achieve your personal and professional goals. If you're interested in experiencing the power of coaching for yourself, head on over to hypehousecoaching.com/start coaching now, where you can set up a one-on-one leadership and executive coaching intro session for free. Remember, the only hype that really matters is the hype within.